Sort of switch screens, and I'll figure out how to get my story up here. All right, so good morning again, everyone. This is a scripture reflection, and I'm exploring the developed relationships practice from EcoFaith's 7 practices for awakening leadership in doing these reflections. And as we all know, for each practice, there are 4 dimensions: personal, interpersonal, community, and public sphere. I'm going to emphasize the personal dimension in this story. And although I'm going to quote briefly from scripture, I'm also going to try to discuss some overarching lessons from assigned readings from scripture without using faithy and religious language. I'm going to try to do what Lee suggested, which is to tell stories that don't necessarily rely heavily on language directly from the Bible or from other sacred texts. But I am going to start with a few verses from Psalm 61 because these are really poetic and they kind of stand out on their own. I call upon you from the ends of the earth with heaviness in my heart. Set me upon the rock that is higher than I, for you have been my refuge, a strong tower against the enemy. I will dwell in your house forever. I will take refuge under the cover of your wings. Learning and knowing, exploring what we know, what we believe, what we intuit, how our instincts work, and so on is a lifelong journey. From birth to death, day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, and even second by second, we receive, process, and absorb information. We are teachers, students, and independent learners. Although we all have moments of original revelation, the information we constantly process comes to us through encounters and relationships with other people, creatures, and places. We are essentially relational beings. In my faith tradition, there are many stories and lessons about this that have been passed down for thousands of years. One basic story explores the idea or belief that there is such a thing as right relationship, that there are right and wrong ways to relate to family members, friends, community members, people in authority, strangers, the land, and even other creatures. These stories involve a creator, a divine being who works through and inspires people to tell stories about right and wrong relationships. The laws and guidance passed down through these stories help define our culture. They help bring order to our communities by establishing mutual expectations for what is right and what is wrong. People being people, there is a full spectrum of responses to what is considered right and wrong. Many people relish clear rules and expectations. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. Other people love to debate, enjoy nuance, and are comfortable with ambiguity. Yes, this is the rule, but what about this exception or that interpretation? Shouldn't we change this rule or adopt a new one? Finally, other people may look at a rule and say, that's just not for me. They might even say, great, there's a rule. I'm going to go out and break it and see what happens. Through our stories, we learn and come to understand that each of us has the capacity to find ourselves anywhere along the spectrum of engagement with the concept of right relationships, with rules and expectations. We also learn that entire communities can be on track or off track at different times. Because we acknowledge the reality that we all make mistakes, individually and collectively, we are taught, learn, and come to understand that our human capacities for mercy, forgiveness, compassion, and love are vital. When we are in right relationships, these virtues inform our laws, rules, and expectations, both at their making and when we interpret and enforce them, and also, finally, when it's time to reconsider, reform, or change them. Critically, what we are taught, what we learn, what we experience, and what we think we know about right relationships isn't fixed in time or space or through laws and rules, even if they were written down in the past. Change and a new or renewed understanding of right relationships is not only always possible, it becomes essential at times. Whenever there is a movement afoot to reach a new understanding of right relationship, there is conflict. When we are among the people who find comfort in established rules, or our established ways of knowing the truth of something, our natural tendency is to cling to them, even when the evidence, our experience, or the experiences of others within our communities point clearly in a new direction. The word that best summarizes an especially stubborn refusal to consider any change in right relationships is fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is a problem that can manifest in any human community or endeavor, not just in communities of faith or in religion. For example, the classical economic assumption that infinite growth is possible on a finite planet has smashed head-on into the realities of ecological limits and ecological breakdown. Whenever we find ourselves with closed minds and hearts about an issue involving right relationships, it's worth taking a very close look at why that is. Fundamentalism in any form can be dangerous, but in religions and faith communities, this is especially so. In many cultures, establishing religious authority and enforcing compliance with religious doctrine and practice becomes a toxic process of power over others. It's not a power among. It's not grounded in the virtues of mercy, forgiveness, compassion, or love. It easily becomes a force of brokenness instead of a force of cooperation, compassion, and love. Finally, what we are sure we know and what we cling to even after it turns out to be wrong or incomplete, or more nuanced than we first thought, is both a common human characteristic and something to try to recognize and pay attention to when it happens to us or to our communities. Our awareness of this trait, our ability to understand when, how, and why we fall into it, and our deliberate intentions and efforts to reject it are a necessary component of all right relationships.
I love that, and I have a question. Your last paragraph or sentence, somehow maybe I spaced at that moment. I missed the intro. You were talking about we need to do this even now in all things, not religion, but you just the very first 4 words or something. I'm
not sure which one. Fundamentalism in any form can be dangerous, or
yeah,
before
go with
that,
that, please, if you don't mind.
But in religions and faith communities, this is especially so. Many communities, in many cultures, establishing religious authority and enforcing compliance with religious doctrine and practice becomes a toxic process of power over others. It's not a process of power among. It is not grounded in the virtues of mercy, forgiveness, compassion, or love. Is that it?
Yeah, but I guess it was towards the very end. Yes, but then your final sentence. Sorry, everybody.
The very last is our awareness of this trait, our tendency to fall into confidence in what we know or think we know or understand. That confidence in that trait, our ability to understand when, how, and why we fall into it, and our deliberate intentions and efforts to reject it are a necessary component of all right relationships.
And it was this trait that I kind of lost where we
lost
were.
The thread, yeah.
Not that that's an important editorial critique. I liked everything you said, and I was like, oh, I missed it.
Yeah, no, it's what we cling to, what we know, even after it turns out to be wrong or incomplete. That's what's dangerous to me. Yeah, and the classical economics thing is an example, but there's lots of examples in religion, science, and everything. Yeah,
I really like that.
Cool. All right, so I probably am doing this too much because I'm doing both these things, but got back to the script. So I don't know if you want to go into breakout rooms or if you want to just talk in the room together, but we can decide that in a minute. But we will take time with the interpersonal dimension of practice number 2, which states we develop relationships with other people, lands, and creatures, discovering our respective interests and seeking to see the world from other points of view. That sounds really good, actually. As you share time with either the group or someone in a one-to-one, please make sure you both get time to share. And you can talk about what from the story connected with your story, what practice are you currently focusing on in developing your leadership and why, or something significant that is happening in your life. So we've got lots of time. What do we want to do?
I would love to do breakout rooms.
Okay, let's do breakout rooms. And I don't know, Robin, can you do a breakout room? Well, we'll find
Robin
out.
says she's not available for a breakout room, but she's in one of yours, and she just probably wants.
She can listen in. Cool.
Yeah,
all right.
there you go.
See you back here in about 10 minutes. Okay, everybody, welcome back into the main room from our one-to-ones. And we have